I want to start this video with an apology. Not a personal apology exactly, but one on behalf of the medical community I've been part of for over 2 decades. Because for years, patients have walked into my office carrying bottles of so-called healthy drinks, products with labels that say natural, zero sugar, antioxidant rich, good for your heart, and they would show me these bottles with a kind of hope in their eyes, like they had finally found something that was helping them. And I would look at the ingredients, look at their blood glucose numbers, and I would have to tell them the truth. What you are drinking every single morning, convinced it is good for you, may be one of the main reasons your blood sugar has never fully come under control. That was never your fault. Nobody told you. The food industry spent billions of dollars making sure nobody would tell you. But today, I am going to. Because here is what almost no one is talking about. There are 3 specific natural drinks. Not medications, not supplements, not anything you need a prescription for, just drinks you can prepare at home that have been studied in clinical trials for their measurable effects on fasting blood glucose, post-meal glucose spikes, insulin sensitivity, and even hemoglobin A1C. These are not trends. These are not wellness influencer recommendations. These are substances backed by peer-reviewed research, and yet most people living with high blood sugar or type 2 diabetes have never heard a single word about them from their doctor. I want to change that today, but before I do, I want to ask you something personal, and I want you to answer in the comments below because your answer matters to me. How long have you been struggling with blood sugar control? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 20 years? Type your number in the comments right now. Because I read those comments, and every single number I see reminds me why I make these videos. If your number is high, if you have been at this for a long time, feeling like nothing truly works, I want you to know you are exactly who this video is for. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I want to invite you to subscribe right now, not because of an algorithm, but because what I share here is the kind of information that rarely makes it out of medical journals and into the hands of the people who actually need it. Subscribe and stay close. You deserve to have someone in your corner who will tell you the truth. Now let me explain something that most people fundamentally misunderstand about blood sugar, because without understanding this mechanism, none of what I am about to share will make complete sense. Most people think blood sugar control is simply about avoiding sugar. Eat less candy, drink less soda, cut the cake. And yes, those things matter. But the real issue is something deeper. It is about how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream and how well your cells can respond to insulin when it does. This is the core problem, and it has a name. It is called insulin sensitivity, or when things go wrong, insulin resistance. Think of insulin as a key and your cells as doors. When you eat, glucose flows into your blood. Insulin is released like a locksmith trying to open those cellular doors to let glucose inside where it can be used for energy. In a healthy body, that key works perfectly. The doors open, glucose enters the cells, blood sugar drops back to normal. But in someone with insulin resistance, those keys have started to bend. The locks have become stiff. Insulin is still being produced, sometimes in huge amounts, but it is no longer effective. Glucose stays circulating in the blood because the cells will not let it in. And over time, those elevated blood glucose levels begin to silently damage blood vessels, nerves, kidneys, and the eyes. A landmark study published in the journal Diabetes Care in 2018, which followed over 4,000 participants across multiple countries, found that insulin resistance typically develops years, sometimes over a decade, before a person is ever diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. This means millions of people right now are walking around with deteriorating glucose metabolism and have no idea. Their fasting glucose is technically in the normal range, but underneath the surface, the process has already begun. This is why what you drink matters so much more than people realize. Because unlike solid food, liquids are absorbed into the bloodstream faster. They bypass some of the digestive slowdown that happens with chewing and fiber. A drink that spikes your blood sugar does so quickly and powerfully. But the reverse is also true. A drink with the right bioactive compounds can begin working within 30 to 60 minutes of consumption, influencing glucose absorption, stimulating insulin sensitivity, reducing inflammatory signals that contribute to insulin resistance, and doing all of this gently without side effects, without pharmaceutical intervention. So let me now tell you about the first of these three drinks, and I want you to pay close attention because the research behind this one is particularly compelling, and the preparation method matters more than most people know. I need you to listen to this message very carefully, because what I'm about to reveal could protect your health and perhaps even save your life. For a long time, I didn't realize the danger that excess blood sugar represented. I discovered that high glucose levels can increase the risk of heart attack, stroke, vision loss, and even amputations. The scariest thing is that type 2 diabetes often acts silently. Many people believe everything is fine when, in fact, their bodies are already suffering serious damage. And if your blood sugar is high right now, you may be at much greater risk than you imagine. But then I discovered a completely natural method that helped me understand how to balance my blood sugar levels and regain my quality of life. Thousands of people are also discovering this simple method and learning how to naturally reduce excess sugar and avoid the dangers of type 2 diabetes. And there's something important you need to know. All this information is compiled in a special video that we don't know how long will be available. If you want to discover what I discovered and learn a natural way to help control your blood sugar levels, click the link in the first pinned comment now and watch the video before it's taken down. The first drink is cinnamon tea. Not the cinnamon flavor you find in processed foods. Not the decorative stick that sits in your apple cider at a holiday party. I am talking about a properly prepared infusion of true cinnamon, ideally Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called soft cinnamon, brewed in hot water for 10 to 15 minutes and consumed consistently over time. The difference between Ceylon cinnamon and the more common cassia cinnamon found in most supermarkets is not just flavor. It is safety and efficacy. Cassia cinnamon contains higher levels of a compound called coumarin, which in large amounts can stress the liver. Ceylon cinnamon contains far less coumarin and far more of the bioactive compounds responsible for its blood sugar benefits, primarily a substance called cinnamaldehyde, along with a group of polyphenols that behave in ways scientists did not fully understand until fairly recently. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Medicinal Food in 2011, reviewing data from multiple controlled trials with hundreds of participants, found that regular cinnamon consumption was associated with meaningful reductions in fasting blood glucose, total cholesterol, and triglycerides in people with type 2 diabetes. The glucose reductions in some trials reached 18 to 29% compared to placebo groups. That is not a small effect. That is a clinically significant number. The mechanism is fascinating. What cinnamaldehyde appears to do inside the body is mimic certain aspects of insulin signaling. It activates specific proteins in muscle and fat cells that help open those doors I was describing earlier, making cells more receptive to glucose uptake even when insulin resistance is present. It also slows the activity of enzymes in the digestive system that break down carbohydrates into glucose, which means glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually, reducing the height and duration of glucose spikes after meals. I had a patient, I will call her Margaret. She was 61 years old, had been managing type 2 diabetes for 9 years, and had grown deeply frustrated with the medication adjustments, the side effects, the feeling that she was always one step behind her own numbers. She came to me not looking for another prescription, but looking for something she could do herself. We talked about dietary changes, about movement, and I told her about Ceylon cinnamon tea. She started drinking 1 cup every morning before breakfast. After 12 weeks, her fasting glucose had dropped by 22 points. Her A1C moved from 7.4 to 6.9. That is the difference between uncontrolled and controlled by most clinical standards. She told me it was the first time in years she felt like she was actually doing something that worked. I want to be honest with you here because honesty is what I believe you deserve. Cinnamon tea is not a cure. It is not a replacement for medication if you are currently taking any, and you should never stop or adjust medication without speaking to your physician. But as a daily practice, as part of a broader approach to blood sugar management, the evidence is strong and the risk is almost zero. The preparation matters. Use 1 cinnamon stick or half a teaspoon of ground Ceylon cinnamon. Pour hot but not boiling water over it. Let it steep for 10 to 15 minutes. Do not add sugar. Do not add artificial sweeteners if you can avoid them. Drink it in the morning, ideally before your first meal. That is it. Simple, accessible, and backed by decades of research. Now, the second drink is one that has been used medicinally for thousands of years across multiple cultures. And in recent decades, the scientific community has finally begun to understand why it works with a level of precision that is remarkable. I am talking about green tea, specifically the kind brewed from whole leaves rather than cheap commercial bags full of dust and low-grade plant material. And I am going to tell you something about green tea and blood sugar that I suspect you have never heard before, because it goes far beyond the antioxidant story that gets repeated everywhere. Green tea contains a compound called EGCG, which stands for epigallocatechin gallate. It is a mouthful. Think of it simply as the most biologically active molecule in green tea, the one responsible for most of its metabolic effects. EGCG has been shown in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity directly by activating a specific cellular enzyme called AMPK, which is essentially the master switch for energy metabolism in your cells. When AMPK is activated, cells become significantly more efficient at absorbing and using glucose, and the liver becomes better at regulating its own glucose production, which is critical because in many people with type 2 diabetes, the liver is actually producing and releasing excess glucose into the bloodstream, even during fasting periods when blood sugar should naturally be low. A study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2006, involving over 17,000 Japanese adults followed for 11 years, found that those who drank 6 or more cups of green tea per day had a 33% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who drank less than 1 cup per week. 33%. That is a massive protective effect from something as simple as a daily habit of drinking tea. But I want to go even further because the research on green tea and actual blood glucose numbers in people already diagnosed is equally interesting. A review published in Diabetes and Metabolism in 2013, analyzing 17 randomized controlled trials, found that green tea consumption led to statistically significant reductions in fasting blood glucose and fasting insulin levels. The effect was stronger in people who also made dietary changes alongside drinking the tea, which reinforces something I tell all my patients. These drinks work best as part of a broader lifestyle, not as isolated magic bullets. There is also evidence that EGCG can reduce glycation, which is the process by which excess blood sugar attaches to proteins in the body and creates advanced glycation end products. Think of glycation as sugar slowly caramelizing your internal proteins, making them stiff, dysfunctional, and inflammatory. Green tea appears to interfere with this process, and that is something no conventional diabetes medication currently addresses directly. How you prepare green tea matters enormously. Water temperature is the single most important variable most people get wrong. Boiling water destroys a significant percentage of the catechins, including EGCG, before they can infuse into your drink. The ideal temperature is between 160 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit, water that is steaming but not yet boiling. Steep for 2 to 3 minutes for a lighter cup, or up to 4 minutes for something stronger. Drink 1 to 3 cups per day, ideally between meals or about 30 minutes before a meal. Not with meals, because green tea can slightly reduce iron absorption from food if consumed simultaneously. And before I tell you about the third drink, which in my professional opinion is the most underestimated and the least understood by the general public, I want to take a moment because I see something in the comment sections of these videos that moves me. I see people who have been fighting this battle for 10, 15, 20 years. I see people doing everything right and still struggling. I see people who feel ashamed, like their body is betraying them. I want to say this directly, it is not your fault. The food environment you were raised in, the dietary guidelines you were given, the stress, the sleep deprivation, the processed food landscape designed by companies with billion-dollar budgets to engineer cravings and override satiety signals, none of that was your doing. You were set up. And you deserve the truth. That is why I am here. That is why these videos exist. And if this channel has given you even one piece of information that helped, I want you to share this video right now with someone you love who is struggling with blood sugar, with weight, with metabolic health, with energy levels that have never been what they should be. You never know when something you share changes everything for someone. Now let me tell you about the third drink, because this is the one that surprises almost everyone I mention it to in a clinical setting. The third drink is apple cider vinegar diluted in water. I know, I can already hear the skepticism. Apple cider vinegar is one of those things that has been embraced by the wellness world so enthusiastically that serious clinicians sometimes dismiss it by association. I want to separate the hype from the genuine science here because the genuine science is actually quite solid. The key compound in apple cider vinegar that is relevant to blood sugar is acetic acid. Every vinegar contains acetic acid, but apple cider vinegar made through traditional fermentation also contains something called the mother, which is a collection of beneficial bacteria, enzymes, and proteins that develop during fermentation. The mother is what makes raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar biologically distinct from the clear processed kind you use for salad dressing. Acetic acid has a direct inhibitory effect on a digestive enzyme called alpha amylase. This enzyme is responsible for breaking down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars in your digestive tract. When alpha amylase is slowed down, the conversion of carbohydrates to glucose takes longer, and glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually. This is the same mechanism targeted by certain prescription diabetes medications, specifically a class called alpha-glucosidase inhibitors. Apple cider vinegar achieves a milder version of this same effect through entirely natural means. A study published in Diabetes Care in 2004 by researchers at Arizona State University found that consuming 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar diluted in water before a high-carbohydrate meal reduced post-meal blood glucose spikes by up to 34% in people with insulin resistance and by about 19% in people with type 2 diabetes. These are not trivial numbers. A 34% reduction in a post-meal glucose spike means less oxidative stress on your blood vessels, less inflammatory response, and less insulin demand on an already taxed pancreas. There is also evidence that apple cider vinegar in the evening can influence fasting blood glucose the following morning. A study published in Diabetes Care in 2007 found that participants who consumed 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar at bedtime woke up with fasting glucose levels 4 to 6% lower than on nights when they did not consume it. The researchers believe acetic acid affects the liver's glucose production during overnight fasting, gently suppressing the liver's tendency to release excess glucose into the blood during sleep. I want to tell you about a patient of mine I will call David. He was 54, recently diagnosed with prediabetes, deeply motivated to avoid progressing to full type 2 diabetes. He was doing everything people told him, eating less, walking more, cutting carbs, and his morning numbers were still stubbornly elevated, typically in the 108 to 118 range. He started adding 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar, diluted in a full glass of water before his dinner each evening. After 8 weeks, his fasting morning glucose had settled into the 94 to 99 range. His doctor was impressed enough to ask him what he had changed. That was a meaningful shift with minimal effort and 0 pharmaceutical intervention. The preparation here is simple, but the warnings are important. Never drink apple cider vinegar undiluted. The acidity is high enough to damage tooth enamel and irritate the esophagus if taken straight. Always dilute at least 1 tablespoon, ideally 2, in a full 8-ounce glass of water. You can add a small amount of cinnamon to this drink, which creates a compound effect between 2 of the drinks I have already described. Drink it through a straw if possible to minimize contact with tooth surfaces. And if you have a history of digestive issues, acid reflux, or esophageal problems, speak with your physician before adding this to your routine. Now, before I close, I need to talk about something that I believe is just as important as what you should be drinking. I need to talk about what you should stop drinking because no matter how faithfully you prepare these 3 teas and vinegar drinks, if you are consuming certain beverages that counteract their benefits, you will not see the results you are hoping for. And some of these drinks are ones you have almost certainly been told are fine or even healthy. The first alert is for fruit juices. All of them. All orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, pomegranate juice, any juice extracted from fruit and separated from its original fiber. When you eat a whole orange, the fiber acts as a net that slows the release of fruit sugars into your bloodstream. When you drink orange juice, that net is gone. You are drinking concentrated fruit sugar with nothing to slow its entry into the blood. A standard 12-ounce glass of orange juice contains roughly 33 grams of sugar and has a glycemic index comparable to a regular soda. I see patients every week who drink 2 glasses daily because their parents told them it was healthy. Those same patients cannot understand why their morning glucose is consistently elevated. This was not their fault. The orange juice industry spent decades convincing the public their product was a health food. It is not, at least not for anyone managing blood sugar. The second alert is for sports drinks and so-called electrolyte beverages. Unless you are a professional athlete training at extreme intensity for 90 minutes or more, you have no physiological need for the sugar in most commercial sports drinks. A standard sports drink contains 21 to 34 grams of sugar per bottle, engineered to spike blood glucose rapidly for endurance athletes in competition. For someone going for a 30-minute walk or sitting at a desk, that rapid sugar hit does nothing useful and everything harmful. These drinks were designed for elite performance, not casual hydration. The marketing has created a completely false impression of who actually needs them. The third alert is for flavored coffees and specialty coffee drinks. Plain black coffee has modest evidence of metabolic benefit for regular drinkers. But what most people call coffee is nothing like plain black coffee. A medium-flavored latte can contain 40 to 65 grams of sugar depending on the syrup. A caramel macchiato contains approximately 35 grams. A mocha close to 45 grams. These are the sugar contents of a small dessert delivered in a cup, counted as a morning beverage. I am not saying never enjoy these drinks. I am saying count them accurately. If your blood sugar management plan does not account for what is in your morning coffee, you are driving with a flat tire and wondering why the car pulls to one side. The fourth alert is for diet sodas and artificially sweetened beverages. I know many people switch to diet soda specifically to manage their blood sugar. Let me be honest about what the research actually shows. A study published in Nature in 2022, involving over 100,000 participants across 10 years, found that high consumption of artificially sweetened beverages was associated with a significantly increased risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. The proposed mechanism involves gut microbiome disruption and changes in how the brain processes sweet taste signals, potentially leading to increased cravings and alterations in insulin signaling that are not fully understood but are genuinely concerning. 0 calories does not mean metabolically neutral. This is something the beverage industry has not been eager to publicize. So let me now bring everything together because you have been generous with your time, and I want to send you away with something actionable. Something you can start today, not next week, not after your next doctor appointment, today. The first action is this. Tomorrow morning, instead of reaching for whatever you normally drink first, prepare a cup of Ceylon cinnamon tea. 1 cinnamon stick or half a teaspoon of ground Ceylon cinnamon, hot water just below boiling. Steep for 12 minutes, drink it before anything else. Do this every morning for 3 weeks and pay attention to how you feel and what your numbers do. The second action. Add 1 to 2 cups of properly prepared green tea to your daily routine. Target the hours between meals, mid-morning or mid-afternoon. Get a decent whole-leaf green tea, not the cheapest commercial bags. Water temperature matters, steaming but not boiling. The third action. Before your largest meal of the day or before bed, if your morning numbers are your main concern, dilute 1 to 2 tablespoons of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar in a full glass of water and drink it. Through a straw if possible. Start with 1 tablespoon if you are not accustomed to it, and increase gradually. The fourth action. Do a full audit of what you are drinking. Not what you eat, just what you drink. Write it down for 3 days. Everything, every juice, every sports drink, every flavored coffee, every soda, every sweetened tea. Add up the grams of sugar coming from beverages alone. For many people I work with, that number is shocking, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The fifth action: protect your mornings. Your fasting glucose is influenced heavily by your last 2 hours before sleep. What you drink in the evening, from herbal teas to apple cider vinegar water to plain water, can meaningfully affect your numbers the following morning. Start thinking about your evening drink ritual as preparation for tomorrow. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me which of these 3 drinks you are going to try first. Or if you have already been using one of them, tell me what you have noticed. Tell me your story. Tell me your number. I read these comments because your experience helps me understand what the people watching this channel actually need to hear. And if you know someone, a parent, a sibling, a friend, a coworker, someone who has been struggling with blood sugar for years and feels like they have run out of options, please share this video with them right now. Not later. Right now. Because sometimes the information arrives at exactly the right moment, and the right moment is always today. My name is Dr. Emily Carter, and I have spent my career trying to bridge the gap between what medical research actually shows and what patients are actually told. That gap is too wide. Too many people make decisions about their health based on outdated guidelines, industry-funded studies, and marketing dressed up as science. You deserve better than that. You deserve clarity, honesty, and practical tools that respect your intelligence. That is what this channel is about. One final and important reminder. Everything I have shared in this video is for educational purposes only. It reflects my interpretation of published research and does not constitute individualized medical advice. If you are currently taking medication for diabetes, blood pressure, heart conditions, or any other chronic health issue, please speak with your personal physician before making any changes to your routine. Some of these drinks can interact with medications in ways that require monitoring. Your doctor needs to know what you are doing so they can support you safely. Take care of yourself. You are worth it.